Hello,
Hi, Nikki.
and a big hello to everyone that's joined us this evening. If I have not met you, my name is Nikki Kinder. I am on the full-time staff here at CityHill Church, and I oversee our kids ministry. And I'm a mom of 3 teenagers. And I'm very excited because with me this evening is Rebecca Simpson. She is a counselling psychologist. She has over 16 years of experience working with children, parents, and families. And she is a mom of 2 daughters, aged 3 and 5. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Nikki. It's great to be with you.
So, Rebecca, we want to know what made you want to work with children in this kind of way?
I love children, and I always have. They are wonderful. It is impossible to be down or sad when you're with a group of excited, animated kids. That's why I love working in amongst a whole bunch of children where my rooms are. My mother was a preschool teacher, so I've always been around young children. I also, from a psychological perspective, love the fact that you can work with children when trauma happens, when wounding happens, and you can help them to find appropriate coping skills and ways of healing, and they don't get all those layers of defensiveness and defensive coping mechanisms that adults have. They're just awesome.
Wow. That's so true. That really is. And now, Rebecca, we've obviously parenting and living in very different times recently. And we want to chat tonight about what you've been seeing with families and children during this crazy time of living through a world pandemic, COVID-19, lockdown. Let us know. What have you been seeing?
Sure. Well, I can speak from a professional perspective and I can speak from a personal perspective, being a mum and a psychologist during absolutely unprecedented times. It has been a roller coaster of unpredictability. And each day, each moment feels different and unexpected. So I would say that many families have had different experiences of lockdown, and I've heard a lot of feedback. So some families, it's been incredibly difficult and challenging with work pressure and pressure from school and just the worry of this virus that's out there and the coping strategies that we have to put in place and the things that we have to do to try and keep ourselves and our families safe. So it's been quite a negative and stressful experience for many people. But I've also had positive feedback that for some people, the family time, the fact that everyone's been stuck in the same house and they've had to get along and find ways of being and actually have found moments of happiness amongst lockdown, that's also super that people have experienced that. But I would say one of the most predominant emotions that I'm hearing from people around me is a sense of guilt. That guilt that they're not doing enough, guilt that they not supporting their kids enough with schoolwork, that when they are supporting their kids with schoolwork, that they're neglecting their jobs, guilt that they aren't enough in the face of answering questions and coping with this unpredictability. It's a real challenge to feel like you don't know what to do and to feel powerless and helpless at this time.
I couldn't agree more. Sure. We've all started 2020 with hopes and dreams, not just individually, but for our children and for our families. And for a lot of us, we've had to put some of those on hold. We've had to maybe even cancel them. How do we move forward? How do we recover from this?
I think we all do exactly what you just mentioned about those hopes and those plans. We have a narrative in our minds, a story that we tell ourselves about the future that we hold on to. So it's this idea of starting a year or starting a season and having an idea of how it's going to play out. It helps us to feel less anxious, to plan and strategize. So we've got people who've started matric this year, or their kids have started matric, the final year of school, matric dances and matric final exams. We've got people who've planned for years and years and years to go on an amazing holiday and for 2020 and saved for that. I know people who've had to cancel their weddings this year. So the sense of loss around that narrative overnight being completely stolen in a way and completely lost is incredibly challenging. So how do we recover from that? That's your question.
Wow.
The definition of recover is actually to reclaim something that has been stolen. So how do we reclaim moments of our lives? How do we reclaim a sense of future and a sense of purpose? I would say at this stage, still in the midst of a pandemic and not knowing what the future holds, we need to take it one moment at a time. To literally, as a wise woman I know once said, find the joy in the journey. Find moments of joy, find moments within our days even, and a little moment of joy, a little experience of gratitude that helps us to create a new story rather than to hold on to what we feel like we have lost and that has been stolen from us.
I love that. To find joy in the journey. That's so important and can be a real challenge. Wow.
Yes, absolutely. It is a challenge. I'm not saying it's easy.
You mentioned to me previously that that you felt that many of us are actually engaged in a grieving process, that we are showing typical signs of the stages of grief. Could you help us understand that process a little bit better?
Absolutely. So it centers around this idea of loss. And grief isn't just about the passing of somebody that we love. Grief is about loss. It's about that empty space around us that we need to fill, whether it's about a future or about ideas of what was going to happen. The matric dance that we never got to go to, or the wedding dress that we never got to wear, or watching your child in their sports day that they don't get to have. So the stages of grief, I would say we all can connect with and understand, to remember also that they are cyclical and we move in and out of them. So if we think of the different stages of grief as being denial, which is avoidance, or just going into shock, or this literally can't be happening, anger and frustration or irritation, the feeling of just sadness, of being overwhelmed and powerless and just sad because of what's happened. Even moving into bargaining, where we kind of think, well, if I just do this or if I just do that, it's going to make lockdown easier, or possibly even helpful bargaining around finding meaning in all of this that has happened and trying to negotiate that. And ultimately, in a positive process of grieving, to try and gain acceptance. And that means moving forward within this new space of loss and change and making a new plan and writing a new story that doesn't necessarily disregard the loss, but it allows us to create a new way of being around that loss. Because it's not going to go away. This isn't going to magically disappear. And we don't want to negate our experience. Hopefully these experiences can grow us and inform our future ways of coping better.
Yeah, I think if we can learn from them and take something with us, then it makes it a little bit easier.
Yes, absolutely.
So how else do we process this grief that we're going through?
We don't want to get stuck. Grief becomes really complex and complicated and traumatic if we get stuck in one stage. You don't just want to stay in the irritable stage. Your family does not want you to stay in the irritable stage. So I would say, firstly, feel what you are feeling. So often we try and hurry our emotions along. We're feeling sad and we say, well, I mustn't feel that. I mustn't experience that. I shouldn't be sad, or I should be coping better, or I'm angry that I'm not coping well. So feel what you are feeling and be kind to yourself in the same way that you would be kind to your best friend or your partner if they shared with genuine authenticity what they were experiencing. Just feel what you're feeling and write it out. Try to communicate using feeling words. So sometimes our feelings are blurred and chaotic. And when we put them into words and we create kind of sense out of the chaos and the nonsense that we are just being swept around in, it can really help to ground us to communicate. We live in community. We have to stay in connection with other people. So reach out to others. And if you say to a mum who you're friends with or somebody at work, this is what I'm experiencing, 9 times out of 10, that person is going to normalize your experience and say, I am feeling the exact same way. And you walk away from that conversation feeling so much better. So I would really, yes, it's like we've had a couple of chats, Nikki, you and I, and we've found some common ground so quickly around what we've experienced either now or in the past.
Yeah.
There's 2 other things that I would say really help to move us forward when we need to process. The one is focus on being intentional. If you are going to do something, be clear in your intention. Be clear in why you're doing it. So if you're going to send your children to school, if you're going to return back to work, if you're going to drive to the shops, have a clear focus in your mind as to why you're doing something and give yourself permission to do it. If you're going to have a duvet day and just stay in your pajamas and feel sad all day, be clear in your intention as to why you're doing it. So you have clarity about what you're doing. And then secondly, when you are doing it, be present. Don't allow your head to be driven with a million other thoughts or regrets or worries about what's going to happen next. Be present in the moment and allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. And then you move on to the next thing with intention and you be present in that moment. And soon enough, those moments start to run together and they start to help you to process and to cope and to realize you've actually coped for quite a while just doing those things.
That's great and super helpful. Thanks, Rebecca. Now we want to chat a little bit about us as parents. And I know for me and for many others that I've chatted to, it's quite a challenge not to get caught up in this wave of emotion. Our tendency is we want to find someone to blame. We want to protect our chickens and be the mama and the papa bears. And so we just want to find someone else to blame. How do we work through this?
Well,
how do we be the parents that we can be?
Finding someone to blame and wanting to blame something is a completely normal defense mechanism. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's a normal way of coping when we feel frustrated and powerless. When we are riding that wave of emotion, I would say, remember to ride it, not to fight it. So again, what I've just mentioned around feeling what you are feeling, stop fighting against it. Ride it and acknowledge what you're actually feeling. And also let go of your expectations around how things should be. If we constantly live our lives focusing on what should be happening and what should be happening, it's really difficult to be grateful for what is, or what we do have. So focus on what we have, what we can do, what we are capable of doing. And then that will help us to find boundaries in that sense. So also when you're making decisions about your family, about the process and where they need to be and what's going to happen over the next little while, it's okay to be clear about those boundaries and to make decisions for your children and for your family and to declare those and to stick to them. Boundaries really help us when we're feeling overwhelmed with emotion. You disappeared for a while there.
I did. I'm so sorry to leave you all by yourself there, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you for coming back.
So we want to chat a little bit around our children. They are going through a lot just as we are. And I would just like to know, how do we talk to them about this pandemic without making them scared?
Yes, I think that's a really, really great question. And I would say the start is to use simple, clear, age-appropriate language. I don't think it helps to lie to children or to be vague, because children can sense when you are genuine and when you are authentic. So to use clear language that's age-appropriate and emphasize on what we can do to be safe, what the grown-ups in their world are doing to keep them safe. But one of the real important things that I would emphasize is attend to the emotion behind the question. So sometimes as adults, when our children ask us questions, we immediately go into logical mode and we think, how am I going to answer the best way so that they know exactly what's going on and I fight the fear and that we're all on the same page. And actually we start to talk too much. And if you attend to the emotion and the meaning behind the question, all of a sudden you find that the question eases. So if your child says to you, when am I going back to school? I need to know when I'm going back to school. What's going to happen? How's it going to happen? Okay, you feel compelled to give them reassurance and information about, as soon as I know, these are the dates that they've given us, and we start to just walk down a road of just facts. Perhaps to pause in that moment and say to your child, wow, you've got a lot of questions about school. I can hear that you are really worried about what's going to happen. This is a big deal for you. And use feeling words and to look behind what is actually happening in the surface of all of those questions. A key, particularly with kids, if they ask you the same question repeatedly, even though you've given them an answer, often there's an emotional need behind that question that just as adults, we need to just pause and actually attend to what they're really asking and what their hearts are searching for. And that really helps to chat to your children and ease the anxiety in that space.
That's so true. There is often a lot behind what they actually are asking.
Yeah, for sure. And for those parents, Nikki, who are wanting a little bit more information and details about the coronavirus and how to explain the illness and the sickness or the use of masks, there are amazing resources online. So people have worked really hard, social workers and therapists have worked incredibly hard to create beautiful resources, activity books, stories that you can access. So I would literally just Google or Pinterest and find something that you think suits your family if you feel like you need that to scaffold what you tell your children.
That sounds really great. Now, as a parent, what would I look for with my children if they were experiencing any type of anxiety?
Okay. Well, we need an understanding of what anxiety is, first of all. Anxiety is the brain sending messages into the body and interpreting stimuli from the environment as threat or danger. So it's the idea that we are threatened or at risk or in danger from something that is outside of us. The challenge with anxiety is that there isn't a lion crawling through the bush to get to us, or there isn't something right near us just about to attack us. It is our mind giving us those thoughts and those fears and feeding them back to us. but there's a real physiological response with our body being flooded with cortisol and adrenaline and our heart rate increasing and our breathing increasing. And you have the impact of that with panic attacks. I've had so many parents telling me that they have panic attacks on the way home from the shops because of the mask and because of the overstimulation of being in the shops in that context and the worry, which is, you would never have a panic attack coming back from the shop under sort of normal circumstances. So our bodies are heightened and hypervigilant in that sense. Children would express that slightly differently. So I would put them into sort of 3 categories that you can watch for. The brain will go into threat mode and will head into the brainstem and the sort of the reactive brain that's there for survival. And children will go into fight, flight, or freeze type behaviors. So fight looks like frustration and aggression and irritation and random triggers, like the last cookie in the jar being broken, will just bring out phenomenal irritation and frustration in ourselves or in our children. And actually, it's rooted in that constant sense of insecurity and anxiety. Flight might look fidgety or distracted or wanting to escape or just needing to keep moving and wanting to just walk away and not being able to settle. And freeze looks like avoidance or numbness or disinterest or not wanting to do anything. I don't want to go for a walk today, Mum. I just want to be still. I just want to sit. So we got to watch for those kinds of signs, particularly if it's atypical behavior for your child and there's a shift in their mood or their behavior. And then we just got to look for those kinds of things like regression. So particularly in younger children, they will regress to a previous state of development where they've already accomplished those tasks in sleeping or potty training or eating. There might be separation anxiety, there might be school refusal, and there might be changes in sleeping and eating patterns. So those are the typical signs of anxiety. And you're back.
I'm not sure why I'm disappearing here, but I can still hear you.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
No, but that's really helpful, Rebecca. It's good to know, especially when we're seeing things recently in our children that we've never seen before. It can surprise us. And it's
scary. You need to know how to help them in those moments.
Yeah, definitely. So, Rebecca, if my child is now in the grips of an anxious moment, what do I do as a parent?
Okay, I would say, number 1, you stop what you're doing and you connect with them on some level. If they're a tactile child who loves snuggles, you hold their hands, you look into their eyes. You're speaking to the part of the brain that is focused on tone and is focused on facial features and is receptive to nonverbal communication. That is the part of the brain that we're trying to soothe in those anxious moments. So find some sort of connection with them. And the most important thing you can do is validate and acknowledge what they are feeling. So in very simple, clear language, label their feelings. In the same way that I mentioned, find the meaning behind what they're ranting about or find the meaning behind their questions. You are so worried right now, or you are so angry with your brother at the moment. You are so scared of this virus, whatever it might be. Simple, clear language that puts their turmoil of emotions into clear, simple feeling words and helps them to know that you get it, that you understand, that you are with them, riding that wave of emotion, that somebody in that moment of chaos is in control and understands and will connect with them in the ugliness of what that feels like for them. That is not the moment to start explaining things. As adults, we tend to talk too much. I've said that before. So clear, simple feeling words to acknowledge and validate what they're going through, and then just hold them in that space, contain them in that emotion, and let Let them ride it out. If we rush in with solutions, it doesn't give them a chance to find solutions themselves. And if we wait and breathe with them and sit with them in that emotional space, they'll often come up with really great solutions and plans all on their own. We just needed to hold them in that space for long enough.
Wow. And we need to be reminded of that. So thank you.
We all need to be reminded of it. I do too.
So now, in response to schools being closed and all the different changes and things that have happened, there are quite a few parents that are homeschooling their children because, well, schools are closed. But there are also quite a few that have now chosen this as the way forward, which is it's a big change from their children going to school. And I was wondering, are there any behaviors that we could make as a regular part of our lives that would be beneficial to our children?
Sure. I think what we've got to remember is that school life is predictable and the boundaries are incredibly clear within the walls of that space. School, our kids generally, most kids have been going to school for years and years, so they know what to expect there. So we need to create some of that predictability and consistency in our home lives if you're bringing school into the home environment. Create some form of routine, create a sense of ritual around how the days will look, how they will be structured, so that there's expectations, the children can predict what's going to happen, and then that happens with pretty much regularity each day. Doesn't mean you can't be flexible, but it just helps to have some sense of scheduling or timetable. I would also emphasize making time for friendship connections. Do not allow those friendships to disintegrate because of lack of contact with others. So make time for friendship connections, to make time for movement breaks and to be active, and also to make time for creativity. Depending on what your child needs, they might need more or less of those things, and to not focus only on the outcomes. So for those mums or dads who are now becoming homeschooling teachers and are now supervising a lot of schoolwork, the outcome of that schoolwork isn't always the priority. It's the process, it's the joy of learning, and it's also emphasizing that we need to feed our children's souls as well as their brains. So to create little moments where there is connection and it isn't just about learning and finishing the worksheet or finishing the task and submitting it, but it's about creating whole, happy children within that new context.
Sure. I didn't even think about that, but you're so right. Wow. There's so much more to it than just getting the work done.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Now, Rebecca, obviously we've got a wide range of schools in our community and in our country, and different schools are going back. Some children have returned to school already. Some are on holiday, are planning to go back shortly, and some have no clue. They haven't had much information. So as parents, what actions can we take to support our children in this process of heading back to school?
Yeah, how do we create predictability when we don't know what to predict?
Exactly.
So, yes, it's incredibly difficult. I think no pressure here, but I'm going to be really honest. Children's ability to cope is directly determined by how their parents are coping. So that's why I think you and I chatted about parents first and our ability to process our own emotions and to get a sense of where we are at. If we are breathing and moving and de-stressing and processing as the adults in these children or teenagers' lives, they will cope much better. So when the adults wrap their heads around what school's going to look like and they get all of the information and they make a decision that is clear and decisive for the children in their lives, I think that will help tremendously. When children are distressed or they are anxious about going back to school or about the changes that are taking place, We mustn't join them in their chaos. We must loan them our calm. That's really important when we're trying to teach them about what's going to happen or talk to them about the changes that might happen in their lives. The rule of thumb is you can't teach a child to swim while they're drowning. Okay, so that goes with the validating of emotions and holding them in that space. When children are stressed about what's going to happen, we need to make sure that we attend to their emotional needs, the meaning behind it, and then when they're in the right headspace, we give them clear, informed, confident messages about school. Once you've got your information in your head, you've gathered your facts, you know what you're going to do as a family to deal with this school situation, you share that age-appropriate information in a confident, calm, concise manner, reminding your child that you are safe. The adults in your world will keep you safe. They will help you to feel safe. And I think that's really important. The children around us, they need boundaries. They need to know that at the very least, the grown-ups know what they're doing and that we can keep them safe, even if it's a little uncertain or unpredictable.
Wow. I love that. Loan them our calm. So we've got to find that first.
Yeah. Nikki, do you think that maybe I can mention a couple of things a few techniques that parents can use with kids? I think
that would be very useful.
One or two things that I think would be helpful. The most important thing I would say is breathing. For us as adults, when we feel like that wave of emotion is building, and for children as well, I think 96% of people don't breathe right. You'd think that it's something that we could do naturally, but it isn't. So breathing is critical. And then another really simple technique while we are finishing off here is the 5-finger grounding technique. Okay, so the first finger, tell your child to name 5 things that they can see in their immediate environment, 4 things that they can hear, 3 things that they can touch, 2 things that they can smell, and 1 thing that they can taste. And as you breathe and you work through that process, you'll find that a very scattered, anxious child draws in, becomes present in that moment, and you can connect with them in a much more calm, grounded way. So those are 2 just really simple little techniques.
That's really great. We've obviously got children that are suffering from separation anxiety. They've maybe refused to go to school and are just feeling unsettled, and those would be really great to try out, in that space. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Very helpful. I know those of us that have joined us this evening that are Christians, we obviously are going to spend time praying with our children. And I was reminded today just of the Israelites and how they were taken out of being slaves in Egypt and were promised to be taken to this promised land. But for years and years, they were wandering around the desert, being led, but not having a home, just picking up their tent and keeping on walking every day. And I was thinking, thank goodness we have done lockdown and I've been in my house and not in a tent in the middle of the desert. But I also thought, imagine what it was like to parent then. We obviously got our challenges, but I was just so reminded that God was with them in the desert. He gave them a leader. He provided for them every single day. They had water, they had food, and ultimately he led them to the promised land. And I just thought how incredible that it is this time where we're living in uncertainty. We don't know when it's going to end. We're not sure if life will ever be normal, but we have God and we do have his promise that he will keep us safe, that he'll provide for us, that he gives us leaders to lead us through this time. So I just want to thank Rebecca for her insights, just to help lead us a little bit better in what feels like a desert for some of us, very challenging times that we are parenting, but just some great reminders and some great tools. I know there may be some parents out there and children out there that may need some extra care. And so just before we end this evening, we want to just pop up our CityHill Kids email address. If there are any parents or children that need prayer, maybe parents that are looking for a life group, people in the same stage of life as them, and maybe even some kids that are keen on joining some of our children's WhatsApp groups, our kids' WhatsApp groups. And then I know Rebecca has also got her contact details. So if anyone is needing some professional help to book an appointment, Rebecca's WhatsApp number is up on the screen, as well as her email address. So thank you for that, Rebecca.
Thanks, Nikki. It was really great chatting with you.
I know, our time's gone so quickly.
I know.
But thank you so much. And I do know that this session is being recorded. It will be up on YouTube. So if anyone wants to forward it on to a friend who thinks they'll benefit from a listen, it will be there as well. So thank you so very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you everyone for joining us this evening.